Hello and welcome to the Happy Recap podcast for a special edition. This is November 18th of 2020. We're deep in the heart of November, and the postseason of the New York Mets never stops. By postseason, unfortunately, we don't mean, World Series and playoffs. What we mean is the various news events that continue to roll through the season. Mind you, not a single player has been acquired by the New York Mets at this juncture. Only a matter of time. But the reality of it is this is the most eventful offseason I can think of. And today we had what I think a lot of fans are choosing to look at addition by subtraction, EJ, as Robinson Cano, who since signing his 10-year contract with the Seattle Mariners 5.5 years ago or so, or 6.5 years ago, I guess now, managed to get his second ding for steroids and a full 1-year suspension and forfeiture of $24 million.
You're completely right about the offseason. I feel like we basically, for the past week, could have done a show almost any night based on the events of that day. And Cano getting dinged certainly is some pretty big news. I can't imagine a world where at one time in my life I lose double-digit millions of dollars only to turn around and do it again, this time to the tune of $24 million. But you're right. I've never seen Mets fans react joyfully to one of our own getting popped for steroids, but that has been the overwhelming reaction on the Twitterverse, that Mets fans are happy that Cano will have that contract voided and no longer be part of the organization. I personally, I'm not thrilled about it. I mean, I thought Robbie was coming along as a kind of a mentor to some of the younger players. I thought he was rolling out of the bed and collecting 2 hits almost daily. Once he got going, he's always a notorious slow starter, but even starting slow in 2020, he still finished at the 316 average. So I wasn't thrilled about it, but I understand the enthusiasm because this really does open the door to some major possibilities for the Mets.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of how I've looked at it. I mean, I would, with you, in fact, we've talked about it several times on this show, how impressive Cano was in this abbreviated season, and really how impressive he was since coming back from his most recent injury in August of 19 or thereabouts. The last 6 weeks of 19, he looked pretty much like the Robbie Cano of old as well. And into this year, and he brought that success with him. Oddly enough, he was absent a little bit at the beginning of the year, leading people to believe that he had tested positive for something else. But the reality of it is that Cano not being on this team is an unfortunate thing for the players, because I do think you're right. I believe that he is especially. You have a generation of players on that team that looked up to him, and that was one of their favorite players growing up. So he definitely has a default mentor status, and I think he loves that role. I think he truly does love that role of being able to speak into the lives of these young players. Certainly, I guess do as I say, not as I do. Maybe one of his lessons, but the reality of it is with Cano is from a standpoint where we've tried to figure out, especially if there's no designated hitter next season, what on earth are the Mets going to do? Because you can't run a 38-year-old second baseman out every single day at second base. How are you going to handle that? And you've just not only unlog-jammed almost the entire New York Mets roster in one sweep, you took a ton off payroll, and which is not the answer it was, but at least this is the type of ownership that might reinvest the savings rather than pocket it. But I think that it also creates interesting possibilities at the time where teams are looking to clear off a couple different players. Chris Bryant, Nolan Arenado, people like that might be available in the trade market. And then there's a certain second baseman up in the Bronx who is yet to re-sign with that team. So I think you have some new, creative, interesting possibilities that, Sandy Alderson's probably a week or two ahead of us on because he knew about this.
Absolutely. And the one thing I feel I do have to point out, and I just hate that I have to point this out almost any time somebody gets popped for steroids, just because a player took steroids does not magically convert him into Babe Ruth. For every Barry Bonds, there's 5 Jorge Sosas or Guillermo Motas or Marlon Burns. So there were the people who were saying today on Twitter that Robbie's success towards the end of last season was solely because he was juiced. I think that I have to heartily disagree. Now, that being said, the fact that the names Lindor or LeMahieu weren't trending in New York today is kind of shocking for the amount of times that I saw their names both thrown around. And obviously, this could open the path to one of those guys or an Arenado coming over to the Mets. It's really a matter of, do you want to go after the free agent market, or do you want to go after a trade possibility? And also equally as important is, I kind of feel, and we all kind of agree, Jeff McNeil is far better suited to play second base than third. So now you're going to move a guy back into a position that he's more comfortable with.
Yeah, and that's why I look at this and go, well, this is potentially more of a possibility for a trade scenario where you're looking at, bringing in a Chris Bryant type as basically, as far as I know, pretty much anybody on the Chicago Cubs is up for grabs. And with the change yesterday with Theo Epstein standing down and handing the keys to Jed Hoyer, you have a changing of the guard officially. And no, folks, don't get your hopes up. Theo is probably not coming to Queens, so don't even get that thought going. But certainly, a Chris Bryant is a possibility, even though he's a free agent coming up. We'll see what the new regime's relationship is with Scott Boras, as they need to have some very, very important talks towards the end of this winter with Mr. Boras concerning their boy Conforto. So certainly, it would be highly unlikely, though, EJ, I would think, and just thinking about Conforto off the top, Conforto and Bryant on the same team, it would be hard to believe that at least one of them wouldn't go to market, even if the market is depressed because of the economy still. It would seem like at least one of them would, and that there's a little bit of danger there.
I would probably consider Bryant more likely to go to market.
Correct.
I think Conforto loves it here. I think he loves being a Met. I think he loves his teammates. And quite frankly, I think he'll get paid the most by Steve Cohen than he would on the market. Whereas Bryant might not be as valued, given that he's not part of the organization already. And he might not get the payday from Steve Cohen that he might possibly get elsewhere. And quite frankly, I'd kind of be okay with that, because of all the guys who we've mentioned thus far, Bryant's the one who I'm kind of lowest on. I'd be lying if I didn't have the dream scenario in my head of LeMahieu and Lindor both playing on the Mets infield next year. And I know that's a fool's dream, but I can dream, right? As
long as it's a dream and you have that basis in reality, a few folks will get those ideas in their head and think it's the only way. The 6 moves to greatness, or whatever it was we used to see back on Mets.com back in the day. The 6 moves the Mets would make to be an all-time great team, but all included trades no other team would make with us. That was always great. But and the other thing too, obviously, with somebody like Arenado, who is very much available, everybody talks about that opt-out. He's got that opt-out coming up after 21. The only question I have, EJ, and I think this is a fair question, for what Arenado is making right now, if you opt out, are you really going to make that in this economy? I mean, you really have to think that that opting out for Arenado, you're not getting a potential opt out. You're probably getting a guy who says, give me a little bonus and I'll stay.
Right. I totally agree with you on that. He is never going to make the stupid money that he's currently making if he does decide to opt out. It definitely wouldn't be in his best interest. And quite frankly, if he's on the Mets, he's most likely going to be on a potential World Series caliber team. So why would you want to opt out of that scenario only to turn around and make less money?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if it was an opportunity to, okay, I'm making $35 million. If I opt out, I know the Mets will pay me $45 million. Well, no, that's even in Steve Cohen's era. I don't see that as happening, especially when it's that against the grain of what's going on in the sport, because that's exactly why some people, like Mr. Reinsdorf there, was a little bit against the idea of Steve Cohen to begin with. It's like, oh, I'll pay this guy $7 million. Well, I'll pay him $25. That kind of thing. They were afraid of that happening left and right. But so I'm not saying I think Arenado is a likelihood. I think I think the Mets probably look at LeMahieu and obviously to play out the Lindor situation as much as they can. But, looking a little bit towards, what's going on with the team, you've got the GM and president of baseball operations position, and now you throw a little kink in the work. One of the names being tossed around as a potential interviewee is Mike Chernoff, who is the GM of the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians currently possess Lindor.
Right. That is a nice little caveat to throw in. Plus the fact that Chernoff's dad runs WFAN, the station we once had an affiliation with. So that's kind of another little wrinkle into the whole thing. But I agree with you that I think Chernoff would actually be a really great option. I really like what he's done with Cleveland. He figured that the last 5 years they finished first or second every season. So you can't deny the level of success he's had there. And I do think it would help the Lindor negotiations to having somebody kind of playing both sides of the fence, if you will. I really like the idea of him. I don't know what it would cost to get him. Obviously, it's going to be costly, but would we be willing to do it? I think so. But
I think that's the one thing we've gotten from Steve Cohen is that he is willing to invest in the top people to bring in, and that's across the board. That's not just on the field. He even said, he's like, he doesn't want anybody learning on his dime. He wants the professionals who know what they're doing, who have done it in those positions. And he's no idiot. He knows what those type of people cost.
you know what's just amazing, JB? In the history of this podcast and the original version of it, we probably recorded 1,000 episodes, and we've never gotten to sit here and talk to one another about players of this caliber coming to the Mets and being honest with ourselves that it's a possibility. This is just, I'm not used to this feeling. I'm not used to us sitting here, oh, do we want Lindor or do we want LeMahieu? Do we want to try to get both? Hey, why don't we throw Springer in? Hey, why don't we throw this guy in? It's just, this is just something that I never thought I would experience, and damn if it doesn't feel good.
I keep expecting to wake up. I'm going to be honest. The Steve Cohen era has felt like a dream. Every bit of it, a dream. I mean, and to show that, again, we've talked about it a couple of times. We have an interactive owner. He talks to the fans. He jokes with the fans, and he has got the, snarky, witty sense of humor that I absolutely adore. Somebody earlier this week said, any chance of getting Billy Joel out, to play at Citi Field, and Steve asked what position. So I mean, it's you have these. This is our owner, and this is the guy who has made $14 billion, and is ready to spend some of it on his beloved New York Mets, and this is our new reality, and it is going to take some getting used to. I'm very excited. I've accepted the reality. Sometimes I still expect to hear, see a statement from Jeff Wilpon or something like that. And it was nice to see a statement from Sandy Alderson today on the Cano situation, although the font was really hard to read in the statement, but online anyway. All caps, guys, come on. No more all caps. But I expect, half expect, press conference. Yeah, we went away for 2 weeks and we decided to come back. No,
Right.
and I wake up in a cold sweat. But it is a different era, and it's going to take some getting used to, because you're absolutely right. This isn't just this off season. We're going to have conversations like this on the Happy Recap next off season, and the off season, and for as many off seasons as we continue to do the show, and certainly as long as Steve chooses to own the team. I don't sense that this is okay, I'm going to get this team up to speed and then just let it float. He doesn't strike me as that guy at all, and he certainly didn't strike me at the presser a couple weeks ago.
No, this is life as we know it now. And to really put it in perspective, to think about reasons that we've done a midweek show in the past. This guy needs Tommy John. This guy's suspended. Somebody screwed up in the PR department. Something with Matt Harvey. It's just, anytime we've done one of these midweek shows, it feels like it's always been somewhat doom and gloom. And here we are right now doing a midweek show where one of our guys got popped for steroids and is going to miss a year. And this is still a positive show. What the hell, man?
we're the one thing is, I mean, that over the years it's kind of been the general consensus of the two of us. I'm more the optimist, and you've been more the pessimist. I like to think of myself as a realist, but compared to you, I'm an optimist. There's no question.
True.
But
True.
lately, we've been putting the happy and happy recap, and it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of like we're not even taking Xanax or something like that before the show. I mean, this is legitimately how excited we are about 2021. How excited we are about Steve Cohen, how excited we are to see what Sandy Alderson does, how excited we are to see who they hire. We're giddy about a general manager and president of baseball operations. This is what we're giddy about right now. And part of it is because that means we can still go out and start getting players. And we don't even have to worry, EJ, that a DJ LeMahieu or any of the other free agents out there are going to, Trevor Bauer, who, I mean, shortly after we put out our last podcast, released almost a video love letter to Steve Cohen, and we'll talk about that in a second, real fast. But they're not going anywhere. You know why? They're waiting to see what comes from New York. They're waiting for us. It's not a matter of us trying to catch them. They're waiting for us because they want to see their offers from New York before they do anything else. And I mean, we've gotten big players in the past. I mean, Pedro and Carlos and, others, over the years, but there's never been a situation where it's been like, let's see what's going down in Flushing before we sign. That has never, ever, ever been a thing in the 56-year history of this ball club.
Most importantly, it's what's going on in Flushing, not what's going on in the Bronx from a New York perspective. They've
Absolutely
always been setting the marker for free agency and the big splash name free agency as high as it gets. And now we are right there with them. And you're right. If I'm a free agent and I'm a very coveted free agent, I'm basically telling my agent, you do not even listen to an offer until you see if the Mets have interest.
That's what I'm saying. And that is, again, somewhere we have never been in the history of this franchise, nor have we been in a place where a free agent pitcher who's openly flirted with your, the president of the team, Sandy Alderson, via the media, as far as, the potential interest in playing here, gone on YouTube and as part of his video podcast, does a 16-minute love letter to Steve Cohen under the guise of things I'm really excited about Steve Cohen for, basically. Things that the Mets are doing right and why it's so exciting for baseball. Holy cow.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You texted me that link the other day, and I just sat there with my jaw on the floor as I was watching it, like, could it be any more obvious? And I said on our last podcast, I truly believe that Bauer wants to be a Met. Well, man, after that, there is just no doubt in my mind how bad he wants to be a Met.
I mean, how often? I mean, you have to think of it this way, and I would love to ask him this. If I had one question with Sandy Alderson, it would be, in the process of doing this now, how often are you pinching yourself? Because this has got to be easier than anything he dealt with in his previous 8 years.
It almost feels like the only reason Bauer isn't a Met yet is because Sandy wants to let the GM take the credit for it. Otherwise, It feels like it would have happened.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of not wanting to sign anybody without without the having the say of an baseball operations person or a GM in place. I think that's kind of the key, and I think that's what it's going to take. But I do think if Bauer's people came and said he's got a pretty good offer, we need something now because we got to make up our minds. I don't think Sandy would hold back if he felt that he was the right. He and Steve felt, yep, let's go get Bauer. Hiring be darned. But it's definitely part of why I think we're so excited to see, will it be Mike Chernoff? Will it be, any of the other names that have been tossed around? I mean, certainly there have been a good handful that will, and a few that won't be coming because they were denied the opportunity to interview for the position, but which is always the case. That has nothing to do with rivalries. Although it was Milwaukee, I still think they're bitter. I still think they're bitter about Carlos Gomez, but that's just me.
I definitely think there's something to that, absolutely. And let them remain bitter, because I think we're still going to get a hell of a candidate in whoever we end up bringing in. But hopefully, by the next time we're broadcasting, we will know who those guys are, and we can start getting to the nitty and the gritty, which is, of course, signing some players here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to start pretty quick after Thanksgiving. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're doing our next show. I don't think it'll be I don't think it'll be this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get a show in before Thanksgiving. And then we'll talk next time also about our special Thanksgiving weekend show. So we'll have a show, but I'm not going to sit here on Thanksgiving weekend to do one. But we're working on a show that'll be really cool that you'll be able to enjoy over the Thanksgiving weekend, and that'll be fun too. EJ, any final thoughts, sir?
No, I'm loving having to jump on for this type of emergency circumstances to talk about the good stuff and the happy recap.
Absolutely. Until next week, let's go Mets and let's go Steve.